All right. Hello again, baseball romantics. Jason coming to you with another episode of the RAB podcast, a special episode, a shorter episode, but we have a very special guest with us. We have Justin Rinaldi from the Nostalgic Baseball Geezer Facebook page. We have partnered with him on a little project here for the 4th of July weekend to bring you guys some fun and some lighthearted debate that we can have as we're going to look back and count down the top 20 World Series of all time. This is the top 20 total series, not games, but total series. And so we're here to kind of discuss that with Justin and talk about how we came up with these 20 and then how we ranked them 1 through 20. We're going to start this countdown, by the way, on Friday, July the 4th, and we're going to run it through Sunday. So all weekend and sometimes Sunday afternoon, you'll get the number one series on the list. So I want to bring on Justin here. We appreciate you, Justin, coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun going through these World Series. And you do some great stuff on your page. I really enjoy what you do there. And I'm sure our followers have as well, as we've shared some of your stuff. I know you just did your big top player countdown. And so I
Yeah.
encourage all of our listeners to go and check that out as well. So your thoughts here on collaborating on doing a World Series countdown for the big Independence Day weekend?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I love the World Series. Any time of year, it's popping on. Even if my teams aren't involved, when it's the World Series, I'm tuning in for every game. So this past season, I'm a White Sox fan. Cardinals are kind of my second team. But Dodgers and Yankees, I didn't really care who won. I mean, they're both kind of teams right now.
Yeah.
But still watching every game and loving every minute of it and enjoying the drama. I'm excited to kind of collab with you on this and share with people kind of our system for coming up with the rankings.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun going back through World Series history. I started in 1903 and kind of went through all of them and just learning about players I hadn't heard much about and World Series heroes. There's a lot of World Series heroes that didn't do much outside of the World Series in their careers, but they came up big when it mattered the most. So, so we came up with 20, and we're not going to give away a lot. We wanted the countdown to be kind of a surprise, but we're going to discuss kind of how we came to the 20 that we did. And then I'm going to let Justin talk about the ranking system he came up with. And so the way we kind of came up with this, Justin, we really just, we kind of figured that a 7-game series was pretty much a requirement. We made one exception, which I think was a good exception. I think it needed to be in this top 20. And then you were able to take that and kind of come up with a very simple ranking system. So you want to talk a little bit about how you did that, and we'll throw out maybe a couple of examples of what we came up with.
Yeah, so the first thing was just the closeness of the series. And that's the individual games, but also the entirety of the series. So we'll reference 2024 series. If it's not going 7 games, it's probably not going to be in there. Like you mentioned, there's one in there that goes 6 games. But even if the individual games are pretty close, if one team's clearly going to be the winner, that's going to affect that ranking. And we just kind of did a basic, 1 to 5 type ranking. So if you get, 5 stars or whatever, 5 baseballs, it gets the highest ranking for, the games and the series being close. So that was one thing to look at. The second thing was memorable moments. So things that are gonna stick in your craw over time. There's some series that aren't close, but have memorable moments. So 1988 Gibson Game 1, hobbling up there off Eck, hitting a home run. That is a very memorable moment. But you will oftentimes, encounter people who are like, "Oh, that happened in Game 1, and Dodgers swept them."
Yep.
Kind of take the shine off of it a little bit.
Yes.
That's an example of, it's a memorable moment, but doesn't have the closeness of the series. And then the final one was just the big names involved in the series. Your Hall of Famers, even if they're not Hall of Famers, guys that are just memorable personalities being involved in the series. Some World Series like this past one have tons of big names. We just had Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Judge, Soto, Garrett Cole, just all these monster names, future Hall of Famers. But it might not be in the top 20 because it didn't kind of hit on all 3 of those things.
Yeah, and I can say I think we talked about this. There were some surprises to us where some of these landed. We thought there would be some that would be a little higher, maybe that were a little lower. And you know what? I'm not going to say it. We can talk about it afterwards. There's one series. I'm not sure if we missed it.
Yeah.
You said something a minute ago, and for whatever reason, this one clicked in my head about memorable moments, or more so the way this series played out. We may need to talk about seeing if this one needs to replace a series, and we'll do
Uh,
that
hey,
off.
we got till this weekend to hammer it down. We got
Yeah, yeah. It just hit me when you said that. I was like, there is this series that maybe deserves to be on here. We'll talk about it. Yeah, we were a little surprised. We'll give one teaser out. We won't say where it is, but I know commonly, and as a Braves fan, certainly the '91 series between the Braves and Twins has always been considered and talked about as one of the great World Series of all time. All the games were close. Classic Game 7, extra inning, pitchers duel, Jack Morris, John Smoltz, just as a 14-year-old kid watching that and living and dying with every single pitch and
yeah.
wanting to murder Kent Herbeck for pulling Ron Gann off the base. I don't think that was in Game 7, but still. That series ended up a little bit lower
Yeah.
than we probably would have predicted. Any thoughts there? I see it got a 4, 4, and a 5, so that means it was it got a 4 for legendary players.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
and yeah,
Minnesota and Atlanta's rosters. I mean, obviously they've got some great players. Minnesota's got Kirby, but
yeah,
then Kirby, you've got some memorable players on there, but they're not Hall of Fame level. Uh,
right.
Kent and Jack Morris is kind of one of these borderline Hall of Fame guys. So they got some players, they've got some name hype, but not maybe as much as some of these other great series that come along. And the Braves, they're just kind of starting that dynasty run that they had.
Yes.
They don't have Maddox yet. They've
Right.
got, Smoltz just kind of was becoming Smoltz. He didn't even have that great of a
Right.
year. Well, like was all
It,
right.
this
Not
was kind of his coming out party in the postseason for sure.
Yeah, they had. I mean, I thought back then Steve Avery was, their next up after,
Yeah, absolutely.
and obviously, that changed. But and their bats were not nearly as strong as they became later. I remember Mark Lemke had a huge series, and he was
We
great
did.
second baseman, but not known as a great stick.
Yeah, certainly not known for his bat most of the time, but in the World Series, he did turn into kind of a Ted Williams, a short Ted
Yeah,
Williams. Yeah. Yeah, this was pre McGriff, pre Maddox, like you said. I think a lot of people look back on those times and they forget that they didn't have McGriff till '93, they had Maddox till '93. So yeah, I can see where that one kind of fell down the list a little bit further than we thought. I think number one won't surprise many people. I, I,
yeah,
I think there's some other ones that could have been there, but I don't think that one will surprise folks at all.
yeah. I don't think the
Um,
top ones will be a shock to people. I mean, the
yeah,
very top ones are all, it's hitting on all notes. So there's no weaknesses in the top ones. Like they're all unbelievable. The 91 series dinged it a little bit. I mean, it has memorable moments. Obviously, the pitchers duel, Lonnie Smith. Um,
yeah.
that's
Kirby Puckett's Game 6 walk
Do you
off.
hold it against Lonnie Smith, or are you one of these people that's like, we had second and third with nobody out, we should have scored?
Yeah, I mean, things happen.
Yeah,
I'm probably a little lighter on players. Mistakes happen. If I were a Red Sox fan, I probably would have been one of those trying to get people to leave Buckner alone. Like, come on, guys, they're out there trying their best. They're not trying to screw up.
yep,
So yeah, what I remember about that series is just that, and you talked about this a little bit just now, but that Twins team and that Braves team, they were so similar. They had both finished
yep,
last in their division the previous year. They both went worst to first, kind of unexpectedly. And the Twins were full of players, and the Braves kind of were. They had Terry Pendleton that was kind of like this, Limke that you mentioned, but they had these guys that just performed when you needed them to. Gary Gaetti and Dan Gladden. Uh,
yeah,
excuse me, Puckett was the guy, but they had all these role player guys that just came through when they needed them.
yeah.
I
Both
think
of those
Chuck Knobloch was on that team too. Yeah.
were just chock full of role players. I don't think I mentioned Charlie Leibrandt was, I think, on that Braves team,
He
and
was. He gave up the home run to Puckett in Game 6. Yeah,
games. I don't know if there's been a guy with less of a profile who's been in more big games than Charlie Leibrandt. He's always
absolutely.
But yeah, they're from my memory when I was watching these games, I remember not really disliking either team.
Yeah,
And I think that was fun. But also it is kind of nice to hate one of the teams. It's
it is.
so I
Yes,
don't know if that works for it or against it exactly because I that was my first World Series. I have to choose a team to root for. I know you don't have to, but in my mind I have to. And
I'm
that
the
was
same
that was
way.
World Series, I rooted for a National League team. I'm an
Yeah,
American guy, and I saw a lot of Braves games growing up just because they were on TV, just like the Cubs. And
yeah,
just was like, I know this team better than the Twins. The Twins were kind of a rival of the White Sox at that time.
yeah.
Um, and the White Sox were kind of an up and coming team in the early 90s. So I really, even though I didn't hate the Twins, chose the Braves as my team to root for. And I remember the NLCS as well with the Game Seven. Who was the pinch hitter in the Game Seven? I can never remember his name. Who got the single to Bonds?
So that was actually 92.
That was 92.
That was
Okay,
92. Yeah, 91 though they had to go.
that's me.
They were down. They were down 3 games to 2, going back to Three Rivers to
Okay.
Pittsburgh, and had to win game 6 and 7. Steve Avery, who you mentioned earlier, he pitched game 6, and then Smoltz began the legend of John Smoltz in the postseason by pitching the Braves to the World Series in game 7. So yeah, that was Francisco Cabrera though in 92.
Gotcha.
Um,
Year after, man.
Yeah, he's never had to buy a drink, I'm sure, in Atlanta since, but nobody really outside of that one hit, Cabrera is probably not very well known. But yeah, I lost my mind that night, 15 years old at that point, and made a lot of noise in the living room as he crossed home plate. But yeah, and this is why we do this, right? Here we are, we're just talking about baseball, just great memories of being just a different time. And I'm looking through these series, the ones that I've been alive for, and I remember these, and I remember watching them. And like you said, I had a team that I was pulling for because I have to do that. The very first World
Yeah.
Series I ever watched that I had a rooting interest that I understood really what was going on as a kid was '86
Yep.
Sox and Mets, and I was pulling for the Mets because back then league loyalty was a big deal. You didn't see these other teams, like you said, you
Right.
didn't you didn't see them very much. There was no interleague play, and you only saw them during the All Star game or the World Series. And so you pulled for the National League if you were a National League fan, and so I pulled for the Mets, and which is interesting now as a Braves fan. Back then, they were not in the same division either. The Braves were in the NL West, which always gets a little bit of attention when we post something about, the '70s and '80s when the Braves and I think who else was in the West? It was a weird alignment in the 1970s and '80s for sure.
Man, I'm just realizing this now. Pirates fans must have just hated the Braves back then.
I would think so. I would think, and Barry
I,
Bonds may hate the Braves more than we kept him out of 3 straight because he went to the
yeah.
Giants in '93, and then we caught
Wow.
them on the last day of the season. That was the last year before the wild card. The
Okay.
Giants won 103 games and missed the playoffs because the Braves won 104.
Wow.
So yeah, he's
Yeah.
probably not super fond of the Atlanta Braves
Yeah.
franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of the Braves as kind of the underdog team that you root for, but they probably had a lot of people hating them in the NL. I
Oh,
was
I imagine.
kind of
Yeah,
out looking in as an
yeah, no
I'm
doubt.
my first memories are that 86 series. I remember sitting for game 6 at a friend's house. My parents were there and they let me stay up and watch the games. And I
Nice.
remember game 6 vividly.
Yeah.
Um, I don't remember game 7. I don't even know if I watched game 7, even though that game 7 was incredible. Like
I
that,
remember game 6 more. Yeah,
yeah,
I was in my grandparents' house. They're the ones that taught me baseball, and we watched the Braves on TBS. And yeah, you know what? I'm the same. I don't really remember watching game 7. That's crazy.
yeah. And I remember other minor details throughout there. I remember feeling like Doc Gooden and Roger Clemens were the two best pitchers in the world, and I
Yep.
remember not being overwhelmed by Doc Gooden, even though he was incredible at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I remember not, as someone rooting for the AL, I remember kind of feeling like, this guy's all hype. That was kind of
Right.
the thought process through little kid's brain is that, you see him in the World Series and he doesn't perform. This guy must be a chump. He must not live up to the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, just little bits and pieces of things. We're talking back. I misremembered the '92 series. I'm sure. I probably did watch that game 7 and just don't recall what
Oh
happened.
yeah.
in it.
Yeah. Because you
And
remember what
after
the big
that,
moment was. Yeah. Yeah.
after the fact, we look back and we're like, oh yeah, I remember kind of basically what happens. I know the story of how Game 7 goes.
Right.
At Game 6, just so memorable in many ways because it was so tight and back and forth, and obviously people remember Buckner. Uh,
Craziness. Yeah.
I always remember the wild pitch because
Yeah. People forget about that. Yep.
I remember the wild pitch vividly and feeling like, oh no, like
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, like you could kind of rationalize, like, oh yeah, things are kind of looking bad. But when that happened, I remember being like, in my chest a little bit, like, uh oh.
Right.
Like,
I'll bet a lot of Red Sox fans
I don't
felt some
think
chest pains.
play.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me. So Mark Collier, who is part of the Almost Cooperstown page, that's part of our little alliance here. When
Okay.
I had him on, he's a Mets fan. He was at Game 6.
Oh,
I believe, if I remember correctly, he said he set down the right field line, kind of near the foul pole, and with his group, he said it was pretty. They were pretty down going into that inning, and then there was two outs, and things were looking bad. But with his little group, and I don't know really if he meant they didn't really understand, but when the ball went through his legs, Mark immediately said he knew what that meant. They were going to win the game. Like the people around him didn't actually realize at the time why he was going so crazy and really
yeah.
celebrating. They didn't realize that everyone was going to score, and he was already losing his mind, going crazy. It was a great story, and I couldn't believe he was there because that's such an iconic game, an iconic moment. To have somebody that was actually there, that was pretty cool to talk about.
And I mean, that game looked like it was bedlam.
Oh
When,
yeah,
like there's toilet paper rolls flying all over the place, like
yeah,
going nuts throughout that thing was the 10th inning when all that comeback came on because they were down by a couple.
yeah,
I want to say Dave Henderson hit a homer, and then Boggs got a hit somehow in there. They went up by 2,
yeah.
so had a little bit of a hole to come back in the bottom of the 10th to try to win that one. But yeah, I remember thinking that ground ball to Buckner. I thought first initial thing was that it was foul. I didn't even think it was fair. So it seemed like it wasn't even a fair ball to me when I remember. Yeah, there's for me, I don't have obviously Game 6 of 1986 series, but I was at Game 1 of the 2005 White Sox series.
Nice.
Got to see Roger Clemens. Again, he comes up a couple times.
Yeah.
And obviously the White Sox series, for me, it was special. But it was a sweep and it had some big names. But, you look back on the White Sox teams, they didn't have a lot of big names. Frank Thomas was on the team, but he didn't even play in that postseason. So
Which is crazy. It's crazy. I'm glad he got a ring. But that's crazy because he was so much a part of those '90s teams that were good. And
yeah.
Frank is one of my favorite all-time players. He's he went to Auburn. I'm an Auburn guy, so Frank is one of the big three there at Auburn. Frank, Charles Barkley, and Bo Jackson. So we adore Frank Thomas. And I'm glad he got a ring out of that. So that White Sox team, they had dominant pitching, correct? Didn't they go through the postseason and just wipe people out with their pitching? Like
they had Contreras. They had Burley. Burley was good other seasons too, but Arland, Freddie Garcia, those guys all just kind of had a special season.
Yeah.
I remember feeling like in 2006, like, hey, we're going to repeat. We got Tomei in a trade, and I was like, this is going to be great, and it never came back together like that again. And it's
funny how that happens. Yeah.
It feels like you're going to have a dynasty, and then sometimes.
Yeah, ask the Cubs after 2016 or the Braves. The Braves did that. So that 2021, we're talking about these World Series and how these heroes and the Braves bullpen was pretty bad that whole year. They were up and down. You were terrified of the closer, who was Will Smith, not the rapper, who ended up winning. I think
there's like 5 there.
Yeah. I think he won 3 or 4 World Series in a row with 3 different teams, like with the Rangers, the Braves, and somebody. Anyway, you were terrified of him coming in. He had Ted Nugent was his interest music. It was pretty cool, but like you're always like, oh boy, here we go,
Yeah.
And in the postseason, him and the rest of that bullpen were lights out. He didn't give up a single run. They were lights out for that 3-4 weeks, whatever it was. You couldn't hit them, and you're amazed. You're like, how does this happen? After all season, you're thinking, how can we even survive with this bullpen? But it's another great example of you get to October, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And that's especially true now with the playoff format that we have. And I know we probably all have our own opinions on whether that's good or not. My colleague Bruce, he's pretty down on it. We've talked about it. I don't love it. I don't
No.
love it. I don't love a team that hovering around 500, grabbing that third wild card. No offense to them, but the Diamondbacks in the 2023 World Series, it's just like, they got hot at the right time, and that's great for them. But is it good for baseball? Like, does
Yeah.
anybody even remember that series?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of waffle between the two. My bigger thing is interleague play. I just wish there wasn't really interleague play, or very, very limited, because
Yes,
when
I agree.
the series comes, I want it to be the first time those teams have really seen each other. I want it
Yeah.
to be these American League teams. They've played each other and battled it out, but whoever comes out top, we really don't know how they'll go against an NL team. Like they've never really had a lot of crossover between them. So I'm more on board with getting rid of interleague play, or at least making it very limited, more than eliminating wild card stuff. But I think the wild card's gotten too widespread right now.
Yeah, they're never going back at this point. Though. Too much money.
One wild card team, something like that.
Yeah, I really do miss the days of the two leagues really being two separate entities, and you have DH in one league and no DH in the National League. I was fine with that. People used to complain about that stuff. And I think it just brings some kind of natural charm to baseball and I was fine with it. I was a National League fan. I liked the strategy that the managers had to employ of not having a DH and who do you substitute and who do you bring in and when, and it just added something to it. But then I liked watching an American League game where you have a DH and you don't have to watch a pitcher go up there and struggle and look terrible at the plate. So it was the best of both worlds. For me, I still love baseball, obviously. I still love to watch it. I'm still going to watch the World Series regardless of my teams are like you said earlier. But there is missing. Maybe it's just because we're geezers, to borrow your face name. Maybe it's just because we're older that there is something missing from that charm angle. I'm also a college football fan, and I feel the same way about college football. Like I used to love college football, and now it's kind of like, we're paying the players, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but just the bowl game, now we got like 50 bowl games. It used to be a big deal to go to a bowl game. It's kind of the same thing. You had to earn your way to the playoffs in baseball. You had to win your division. Now you can be the third best team in your division and go to the playoffs, and not only go, but beat the team that won your division.
Yeah.
That played 162 games and won the division. So
isn't that how
soapbox?
Or whatever was going on when you were like 10 to 15 years old, that's how it should be.
Yes.
The music, whatever was going on, like that's how we should go back to.
Those were the good times. Yes.
No matter how old you are, that time frame when you're like, just kind of becoming a teenager, that's the sweet spot. That's
the sweet spot for sure.
Yeah.
That's when you were barreling up the ball, man. That was good stuff. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. All right. Well, you got anything you want to add, Justin? I appreciate you doing this, and already we're having a lot of fun with it. Looking forward to doing the countdown this coming weekend. We're recording this on Tuesday, so again, we're gonna get the countdown started on Friday while all you guys are eating your barbecue and your hamburgers, and before you blow off a finger or two, if you're a Braves fan, with some fireworks, we're gonna give you something fun. We want some fun debate on the Facebook page. We want to keep it light. We're not experts. We just have a lot of fun with this, and Justin came up with a great ranking system, and we're gonna just have fun with it, man. You got anything you want to add?
Nah, just I'm with you. Like, just have some fun debate, baseball lovers, tossing out some old memories, bringing up some good times of games, or games that we don't know. Some of the series in there will be from before I can remember, happened before I was born. So it'll be good to kind of look back at those memorable moments in those series, and some of them. I don't know if people will know about some of these really old series, because there's World Series been going on for over 100 years. There's some good ones way far back.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned earlier how people forget that Gibson home run was game one. So I'm sure there'll be some surprises as we go through these and look at them and talk about them. So really appreciate you, Justin. Thank you for jumping on, and looking forward to doing this countdown this weekend.
All right, Jason, take care, man.
Have a good one. We'll see you guys at the ballpark.